Danielle Lawson stood under the scorching afternoon sun in a nearly empty parking lot, leaning into her black SUV as she hurriedly searched through piles of loose papers, old receipts, and folders spread across the seat. Sweat slid down her temples as her phone buzzed again in her pocket. Another missed call from her office, reminding her how late she already was. Her purse was gone, and with it her identification, wallet, and everything she needed for the day. Her breathing grew faster as frustration mixed with urgency, and all she could think about was finding it before her meeting started. She hardly noticed the slow roll of a police cruiser behind her until a harsh voice suddenly cut through the air, ordering her to step away from the vehicle. Startled, Danielle straightened and turned to face a white officer whose eyes were already narrowed with suspicion. His posture was rigid, his hand resting near his belt, as if he had already decided what kind of situation this was. Without raising her voice, Danielle explained that the SUV belonged to her, that she had misplaced her purse somewhere inside, and that she was in a rush to get to work. Her words, however, seemed to mean nothing to him. He barely listened, shaking his head as if he had heard the same excuse 1,000 times before. When she mentioned she had no ID because it was in her missing purse, his expression hardened. To him, that was all the proof he needed. He accused her of attempting to steal the vehicle and told her to turn around. Before she could fully process what was happening, cold handcuffs closed around her wrists. Shock and anger rushed through her as she tried to insist again that the car was hers, but he ignored her completely and pushed her into the back seat of the patrol car. Through the window she watched him search her SUV with a flashlight, not once bothering to run the license plate or check the registration. Desperate, she told him once more that she was the state attorney, hoping that would finally make him pause. Instead, he laughed, clearly amused by what he believed was another lie meant to avoid trouble. At the police station, time crawled by. Danielle sat in a holding area while officers passed by, some glancing at her with curiosity, others not acknowledging her at all. The officer who arrested her continued to treat her like a criminal, making sarcastic remarks and dismissing every request she made to verify her identity. No one checked the system, no one reviewed the vehicle information, and no one seemed interested in hearing the truth. For him, this was about authority and control, not justice. Hours later, she was finally allowed to make a phone call. Keeping her voice steady despite the humiliation and frustration boiling inside her, she contacted Mark Edwards, a close colleague, and one of the sharpest attorneys she knew. When Mark arrived, his calm professionalism was paired with visible anger as he quickly assessed the situation. He demanded answers, pointed out every procedural failure, and insisted that the officers immediately run the license plates and check the database. His words were precise and powerful, cutting through the excuses like a blade. The atmosphere in the room changed almost instantly once the information was pulled up, and the truth was undeniable. The SUV was registered to Danielle Lawson. Her name appeared clearly in the system along with her official position. The confident arrogance on the officer's face slowly drained away, replaced by uncertainty and tension. Whispers moved through the station as the reality of the mistake settled in. Danielle was not a suspect, not a thief, and not a liar. She was the state attorney, wrongfully arrested based on nothing but assumption and prejudice. What had started as a simple search for a missing purse had turned into an unlawful detention that violated her rights. As the officers realized the seriousness of what had happened, the power dynamic shifted completely. The arrest was illegal, the procedures had been ignored, and the consequences were only beginning. After the truth came out, the mood inside the station changed completely. The officer who had arrested Danielle no longer looked confident or in control. Supervisors were called in, paperwork was reviewed, and quiet conversations filled the room as everyone realized how badly the situation had been mishandled. Danielle stood beside Mark, her posture calm but firm, watching as the same people who had ignored her hours earlier now rushed to correct their mistake. An apology was offered, but it sounded empty, more like damage control than genuine regret. Danielle accepted it politely, yet made it clear that what happened could not simply be brushed aside as a misunderstanding. She explained that she had followed every instruction, spoken calmly, and repeatedly asked for basic verification that should have been done from the start. The arrest had happened not because of evidence, but because of assumption, and that was what made it so dangerous. Mark supported her firmly, outlining the legal violations and reminding the department that this case could easily turn into a major lawsuit if accountability was avoided. The police chief eventually met with them, his face serious as he acknowledged that proper procedure had not been followed. He confirmed that an internal investigation would begin immediately, and that the officer involved would be placed on leave while the situation was reviewed. Danielle listened carefully, then spoke with quiet authority, explaining that this was bigger than one arrest or one officer. She said that countless people without power or legal knowledge experienced the same treatment every day and had no way to fight back. This incident, she insisted, should be a turning point. Over the following days, the investigation moved quickly. Camera footage was reviewed, reports were compared, and witness statements were collected. It became clear that the officer had ignored protocol and escalated the encounter without cause. His past behavior was also examined, revealing a pattern of similar complaints that had never been taken seriously before. With the evidence stacked against him, the department made its decision. The officer was officially terminated for misconduct. While the news brought some satisfaction, Danielle knew it was only the first step. She met again with the police chief and demanded broader reforms, including mandatory training on racial bias, clearer arrest procedures, and real consequences for officers who abused their authority. Community leaders were invited into the conversation, and new oversight measures were introduced to ensure transparency. Danielle even agreed to help monitor the reforms, using her position to push for lasting change rather than temporary solutions. Public forums were held where residents shared their own stories of unfair treatment, proving that what happened to her was not an isolated incident, but part of a larger systemic issue. Slowly, policies began to shift, and the department was forced to confront problems it had ignored for years. Danielle remained involved every step of the way, determined that no one else would have to experience what she had gone through simply because of assumptions. The experience had been painful and humiliating, but it transformed into something powerful. One wrongful arrest became the spark that pushed an entire system toward accountability. Danielle understood that real justice was not just about clearing her own name, but about protecting others who had no voice. The road ahead would be long and difficult, but she was ready to continue the fight, knowing that true change never comes easily, yet always begins with someone willing to stand up and demand it.